Oh, all right. Good afternoon. The meeting will come to order. My name is Carly Myers. I'm a consultant for the town of West Hartford. I would like to welcome to the second of two virtual public meetings for the town of West Hartford 2020 to 2024 5-year CDBG Consolidated Plan. Uh, I would like to I'd also like to welcome Andrea Ruggiero and Teresa Lerner of the West Hartford Social Services Department, and Helen Rubino Turco, Director of the West Hartford Leisure and Social Services. These individuals are our hosts this evening. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19, this meeting is being conducted in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order Number 7B, which permits municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. These public hearings will broadcast live on television on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier TV Channel 6098 and streamed live at www.whctv.org. Please keep in mind that a complete copy of the 5-year consolidated plan is available to the public on the Department of Social Services CDBG website at www.westhartfordct.gov. For audio comments, any interested person may participate in the public hearing by calling at the scheduled date and time. For today, our meeting, you would call in at 1-408-418-9388 with the access code 797-356-245. Participants using caller ID blocker are not permitted to participate. Participants will be called in the order in which their call was received. When prompted by the host of the public hearing, participants will have permission to speak on matters germane to the hearing.
Thank you, Carly. So that was Carly Myers, a consultant for the town of West Hartford. And my name is Helen Rubino Turco. I'm Director of Leisure Services and Social Services for the town. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to explain why we're here and why we are doing a public hearing, in case people are watching on television. As a community development block grant entitlement community, every 5 years, West Hartford is required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to submit for approval a strategic plan called the 5-year Consolidated Plan for Housing and Community Development, otherwise known as the CON Plan. And preparation of West Hartford's 2020 to 2024 CON Plan began last fall. Part of our job is to solicit community comments about how residents think the town should invest these funds that we receive from HUD. And we do this in a number of ways. One of them is through a community survey that we conducted from February until May or early June. Is it still up? It might even still be up.
I think it might still be live, yeah.
Okay. And also through 2 public comment meetings like this one. We had one yesterday evening and we're having one this afternoon. And the overall goal of HUD's community planning and development programs like CDBG is to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing and a suitable living environment and expanding economic opportunities, principally for low and moderate income people. In West Hartford, we primarily fund improvements to neighborhoods where low to moderate income residents live. So for example, our housing rehabilitation program, the food pantry, and support of the Hillcrest Area Neighborhood Outreach Center, HANC, are examples of CDBG supported programs. Community improvements such as sidewalk and road paving, renovation of public space, such as in parks or playgrounds, or improvements to community facilities for ADA accessibility. These are also possible uses of the funds depending on the neighborhood in which these facilities exist. And we take all the comments that we receive, whether by letter, through the survey, or through comments like today. We take all these comments and then we kind of gather them in themes, and we incorporate those themes into the 5-year consolidated plan for housing and community development. West Hartford has a number of councils or commissions that are appointed by the town council, and they also advise us. So as a conduit, they're sort of a conduit for the public to have a voice in what happens in their town, but also a conduit of information from the town to the community. And we did receive this year a letter from the Citizens with Disabilities Commission, which expressed support for continuing improvements that address accessibility for citizens with disabilities, and for heightened awareness of the needs of people with disabilities. So that is a project that was in our 5-year consolidated plan the last time and is likely to remain again. It's something that also we found was something that was mentioned in the surveys. Seeing as we have no callers at this time, I just wanted to remind anyone listening that they can call in and give us their comments during this public hearing by calling 1-408-418-9388. Again, that's 408-418-9388. And the access code for that call is 797-356-245. Again, I'll repeat the access code for today's phone call. It is 797-356-245. In the meantime, Carly, would you mind just running through for us some of the results that you found from the survey, so that in case anyone is listening, they can, even though we discussed this last evening, they can kind of be brought up to speed on what the survey respondents had. Thank you.
Sure thing. So we had an online survey that went out. It's my understanding that it was blasted through a community listserv, which had really great results. We had 409 responses, which is, I think, 5 years ago for our last comp plan, a very similar survey only had around 100 responses, so this is great. The first question that we asked was just kind of generally asking how people would self-identify in terms of if they're a renter or a homeowner, if they are staff on a social service agency, if they're a person with a disability, if they're a parent of a school-aged child. Seeing just as that, belonging to different groups might give them different lenses that they see the community and so they might see different needs. The first question was, what community facilities are needed in West Hartford? And just ranking from what people voted on as highest priority kind of to lower priority. People thought that parks and rec facilities were of very high importance, followed by fire station equipment, libraries, youth centers, childcare centers, and senior centers. The next question is, what community services are needed in West Hartford? The highest ranked response was public health services, followed by youth activities, health services, childcare services, transportation services, senior activities, housing counselors, and legal services. The next question was, what infrastructure is needed in West Hartford? And ranked high to low, the answers were street improvements, drainage improvements, water and sewer improvements, sidewalk improvements, biking and cycling, and signage improvements. When we asked what special needs services are needed in West Hartford, ranked high to low, people responded that West Hartford needs child abuse services, substance abuse services, domestic violence support services, a center or service for disabled, accessibility improvements, homeless shelters, and HIV and AIDS services. We asked what business and job services are needed in West Hartford, and ranked kind of high to low. We had job creation and retention, small business loans, startup business help, employment training, business mentoring, and commercial facade improvement grants. We asked what neighborhood services are needed. What neighborhood services are needed in West Hartford? And again, high to low. We had recycling, trash and debris removal, cleanup of abandoned lots, tree planting, parking facilities, code enforcement, and graffiti removal. And we asked about these broad categories because, you know, those are some of the broad categories that CDBG funds can be spent on. So that's why we're kind of grouping in those categories. And as well as kind of those questions, we also just had a text box kind of free-form. Do you have any other questions or comments or feedback? And we had 119 responses. So those are still getting kind of categorized and parsed, so we can kind of group, you know, so many people voiced this concern. You know, people wrote in things about traffic lights. There are some responses that were specific to the COVID pandemic. And it's my understanding that West Hartford is getting a separate pot of money to help address some of those needs. Helen, you're on mute.
Sorry, I apologize. Carly, what would the next steps be? This is Helen Rubino, Turco again. What would the next steps be for our consolidated plan now that we're, this is the second and final public comment period for our plan as it's still in development, but what are the next steps?
So taking all the responses from the survey and that we've gotten through email and through people calling in, these comments will be, everything that we receive will be going into an appendix. So, you know, and based on comments and feedback on kind of priorities and goals, we'll use that to shape where money gets spent with this grant money. And so the next steps will be finalizing the plan. Right now we had a draft up on the town website for comment. So after any edits, that gets entered into an online submission service, and the deadline for that is August 15th.
Of course, West Hartford also then has to disperse these funds. So once our 5-year consolidated plan is accepted by HUD, reviewed by HUD, and then comes back to us for adoption, Teresa, perhaps you could explain how different organizations, what the timeline is for them once our annual plan is set. So the 5-year consolidated plan has 5 years. What a surprise. And the first one is Each one has an annual plan. And the first one is the current year that we're in that started July 1. And so we have themes that projects would typically fall under one of those categories. And so, Teresa, if you could just explain to the public for a few minutes what happens, what the time frame is for the community to request funding.
Okay, so this is Teresa Lerner. So every year in January, we on the website and through even through the newspaper, we put out a public notice that we will accept applications. And these applications are restructured every year. And sometime in January, we make it available to the public. And usually by beginning of March, we expect, we ask that the applications, we have a set due date and a time. Of course, we always can work with people as to help different groups understand what the process is, what kinds of things they need. And then after that, when we collect all of the applications by the due date, then a committee sits down and reviews the applications and sees if it's eligible, if it's fundable and doable. And then we get back to the organizations to say yay or nay. We accept the application as it stands, or maybe even if there could be some things that need to be worked through, we'll work through them with the different organizations so that they're fundable and doable, so, and eligible.
Thank you. So I think what we've done now is so far this afternoon in this public hearing, which will last for another 15 minutes or so, is we've provided the public with an opportunity to tell us what they think we should focus on for the next 5 years. We also have received an update on the kinds of comments that we received in the survey. We acknowledge we've received at least one correspondence regarding how we should use the funds. And of course, the town also helps identify the implementation of some of these goals. So for example, the food pantry is run by the town, or some of the code, the code enforcement is done by the town or by the West Hartford Bloomfield Health District or by the building department. So, you know, there's certain areas like that where we, in lieu of giving a grant to someone outside, an outside organization, the town would function in that way. And we've also reviewed what the timeline is for the current CDBG 5-year consolidated plan, as well as how our annual plan is implemented every year. The website for where you can find more information about CDBG in West Hartford is www.westhartfordct.gov/social services. And if you go to the social services department section of our website, there's a tab for CDBG. Our website is in the process of being revamped. So we have a brand new website that I think is being released in the next couple of days. So I can't tell you exactly where it will be or how it will look, because I know what it looks like today, but I don't know what it'll look like in a couple of days. But certainly, if you go to the town's website and go to social services page, there will be a drop-down page for CDBG. And that's where you can find the survey. And that's where you can also find a copy of our current draft of the CDBG 5-year consolidated plan. And remember, CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. And this comes from HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, Department of Housing and Urban Development. They give monies to the state, and then the state divvies them up to various communities that are eligible for this funding. West Hartford has some pockets of poverty or low to moderate income neighborhoods, and these funds are directly related to helping improve those communities and improving the quality of life of the people that live there. So we now have 10 minutes left and we don't have any callers. So we will still remain on the line, but we might not be very chatty for the next few minutes unless someone comes up with something that they'd like to add. Thank you.
This is Carly again. I can talk a little bit just about the structure of the Consolidated Plan, if that's of interest to anyone listening. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development is, a federal level of government, and they provide a very set template for what they want the Consolidated Plan to include. So one of the first sections is a needs assessment for the town of West Hartford, and they give us a lot of data that's pre-populated from census data, showing different needs by tenure, by income level, by race and ethnicity. So it's easier for us to see, what have rents been doing over time? How has income risen or fallen or stayed stagnant relative to rent or housing values? So that can help us inform what we see as needs going forward. In addition to the needs assessment, there's also a market assessment that's kind of more focused on different industries and employment in the town, and how those industries and kind of level of income relate to need felt by residents. And then the next section is the strategic plan, just that given the kind of broad needs and the market conditions in the town, how should we best allocate these funds? And that's a lot of what we're getting feedback on, as well as, using all of the census and economic data as well.
Thank you, Carly. This is Helen Rubino Turco again. I would be remiss if I did not remark on the importance of participating in the U.S. Census. I believe that you can go to uscensus.gov, or if you haven't already submitted your census, or you can call them and they can walk you through the process. But it can all be done online now, and the census helps determine all kinds of funding that comes to our community, including funding for public schools, as well as things like the Community Development Block Grant. So we do encourage each and every resident to fill out the census if they haven't already. The census was extended due to COVID, and it is still available to fill out if you haven't already. So if you go to www.2020census.gov, that will bring you to all of the information that you need. So again, it's 2020census.gov to fill out your census. Thank you. We have about 8 minutes left.
Carly, I don't know if you want to talk about that we're an entitlement community, and is that because of our vast range of income, housing? Do you want to talk to that?
Right. So entitlement communities are communities of a certain size. So there's a population kind of threshold you have to meet, and also a determination of need. So there are some communities in Connecticut and across the country that have very great need but don't reach certain thresholds. And I believe those usually go, the state as a whole has a kind of balance called the Balance of State CDBG fund. So smaller communities, instead of going through their town or municipality, they go through the state to request CDBG funds. And the program is designed that the block grant, the federal government gives these entitlement communities this amount of money as a block, and the town gets to decide the best uses and how to disperse the money. And that's really useful for, responding to local needs on an individual level. And in turn, this 5-year plan is kind of a long-term strategy, and the annual action plans are a year-by-year kind of accounting of how the block grants are being spent.
And I know too, just from doing some of the reporting, because we are an entitlement community, I believe it's because we're an entitlement community, we have different percentages that we have to, different thresholds we meet, which are usually lower than the national or the baseline. And that helps us do more projects.
Right. And be eligible for more in different grant funds.
Yeah.
So this is Helen Rubino Turco, Director of Leisure Services and Social Services. It's 2:28 p.m. So in the remaining 2 minutes, I just want to thank Andrea Ruggiero for hosting us for the last couple of meetings and for other meetings for the Department of Social Services and Leisure Services. And also acknowledge the participation of Carly Myers, a consultant who the town of West Hartford is happy to work with to help us do the research, conduct the survey, kind of cull all of the information and produce a draft plan for the town in order to allocate to make a plan about how to allocate the funds. So our community outreach is very important to us. And also to Teresa Lerner, who is a full-time social worker of the town of West Hartford and also oversees the administration of CDBG for the town, which is a huge job. And in closing, we look forward to having the final draft of the the draft when it's ready to be adopted will be posted on the town's website, www.westhartfordct.gov/social services. And then when we are finished here this afternoon, I would love to just chat with Carly and Teresa about the next steps, about how we're going to implement or incorporate the comments that we've heard, as well as start to get the plan ready for its submission. So it looks like West Hartford is still on. The TV is still on.
Yeah, I'm gonna exit the West Hartford. You just have to let her know that she can exit, I guess. All right.
Okay.
I made you
Yeah.
post so it won't crash when I leave. Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you.